what are the top ones that actually provide that ROI for institutions or the larger users at large?
It's a little bit like, oh, this is crypto cool. There may be a use case, but are people going to pay for it? Then, of course, our first product was the Visa prepaid card.
Now, one of the most important things, Chin Tah, in the crypto industry that we are experiencing globally is the element of trust.
Trying to understand what would it take to build a world-class tech ecosystem here in Singapore, right?
What makes Singapore unique for the Web3 space?
Because Singapore being what it is, safe, stable, it has to be responsible and innovative. And I'll take very little credit for this, but we have a very thriving tech ecosystem.
According to you, for the decentralized technology at large,
I don't think the world needs more hype around Web3 or blockchain.
Fair
right?
point.
It's gonna be an issue, right?
how do you think these emerging technologies is shaping the future?
The funny thing here is a lot of people compare blockchain unfavorably with AI.
How would you mitigate that skepticism?
You know, friends and family, they're like, what's this crypto? Show me, what does it do?
Hello everyone, welcome to Quantum Minds. My name is Kapil Dhiman, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Quranium, and I have my amazing co-host Olivia Karlsson with me to interview a very special guest today, Chin Tah, the country director and general manager of Crypto.com. Thank you so much for joining us, Chin Tah. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Kapil and Olivia. I really appreciate the opportunity. Maybe I'll just do a quick self-introduction.
Sure.
My name is Chin Tah. I'm the general manager for Crypto.com Singapore. Obviously, we are one of the leading crypto exchanges in the world, but it may not be so obvious or clear to people is that we are headquartered and licensed here in Singapore. Mm-hmm. So this is our home market. This is where we serve our 100 million base of users globally with our ecosystem of services, which include obviously trading, but as well as our prepaid Visa card, our merchant payment services, and our DeFi ecosystem. So we are very proud to kind of like continue to deliver value for our users from Singapore, our home market.
You have had a very fascinating journey, Chin Tah, right? We would love to start with your personal journey from a traditional background to then coming into the crypto world. How has that been? What drove that, and what was your experience when you transitioned to this crypto industry? If you can share in detail about your journey, your background, and when you entered the crypto world, what differences you noticed?
Well, the journey has been a very interesting one, Kapil. I would love to tell you that, I read the Bitcoin white paper and got fascinated by it, but it was much more incidental. I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of people about their own crypto superhero origin stories, right? For myself, I worked the Singapore Public Service for almost 20 years. I was in line of investment promotion. What that means is I speak to people to convince them to invest in Singapore. And I was overseeing in the last few years of my career there, the tech industry. Trying to understand what would it take to build a world-class tech ecosystem here in Singapore, right? And one of the things that we must do as part of this job is to understand emerging trends. And back then, Web3 was coming up as something very, very interesting and also very difficult to wrap your head around, right? So in trying to figure out how might we capture opportunity from Web3, I got very caught up in kind of like a lot of the ideas and concepts behind decentralization, the blockchain, what it could do, how its transformative nature. And I did think that, hey, you know what, rather than spending my time, and it's been my whole career, trying to build something from the outside in, telling companies how they might grow in Singapore and Asia to go into markets around Southeast Asia and so on, why not I take the plunge and cross over to the private sector and pretty much really the deep end, right? This is the Web3 crypto industry, which I knew very little about. So that was how I got started, and it's been full on since then, right? But I mean that in the best possible way. So just meeting with founders such as yourselves, new projects, institutions, including banks and the like, but also my former colleagues in the public service, just trying to share with them, right, the hard work that the men and women are doing in this sector, that is not just all hype, there's a lot of substance there as well. And it is this challenge that I kind of embraced and I continue to do to today. Yeah.
Wow. And this is something very interesting because Olivia and I, before this, were just talking about the journey that you personally have seen. And from public services to crypto is like two completely different directions. And now being the general manager of one of the biggest crypto companies in the world, crypto.com, you are leading that narrative for, let's say, literally the fintech hub of the world. How does that put, or rather change, the sense of responsibilities that comes on you? And how do you take the right set of decisions? Because your way of thinking, the way of operating changes substantially. I'm sure when you're in public services, the way you have to take decisions, the way it impacts public at large is different. When you're in the crypto industry and while driving a market like Singapore, the operation models also may have undergone a drastic change. How has that been?
Well, it's certainly a mindset shift, to say the least. But I just also wanted to qualify, I only take care of the Singapore market. It's a special one for us, a whole market. We have to show up for it. We have to continue to grow it. It's a very key market for us. But this is mainly what I drive. As it relates to that, just going back to your question, I feel like there's a lot of responsibility. I feel a great sense of responsibility because whenever I see that there's a bit of a gap between reality and perception, and you can say this on both sides, right? Like I speak to some of my former colleagues in the public service, not just here, but globally, like folks who are officials and regulators. I wasn't a regulator. I was an investment promoter. I was on the economic side. But I sort of understand what makes them tick, right? I see where their concerns are coming from. Some of them are completely legitimate. There's a real concern around scams. There's a real concern about bad actors, speculation. But a lot of it is also grounded in maybe a bit of a misunderstanding or lack of understanding. And to be fair to them, they acknowledge it, right? So there's a bit of a gap there. But similarly, on the Web3 community side, there's this, sometimes, depending on who you talk to, some elements who are fairly adversarial with jurisdictions and regulators. And I'm not sure that's always the most constructive stand to take, right? Other people are much more moderate, obviously. There are many, many companies, including Crypto.com, who are prepared to work hand in glove with regulators to find a good compromise that prioritizes business growth and innovation, but also responsible growth of the sector and consumer protection, right? I think in many ways, Singapore is ground zero for that. The Monetary Authority of Singapore has demonstrated itself to be a very progressive regulator, but also tough, which is fine. Our take on regulations is that regulations that are fit for purpose will give the industry the clarity it needs to continue to grow, right? The regulations will be what they are because regulators have their own set of considerations, right? The best we can do as industry practitioners is to kind of like understand where they're coming from and do our best to bridge that gap. So yes, I do feel a sense of responsibility. I find that, people are not really they're talking at a bit at odds. And what can I do to come like jump in the middle, and kind of bridge that gap a little. Like you would bridge two blockchains, right? Like let's try to get the conversation going and at least deal with the reality of the situation.
Wow. What do you think about it? This is something that you dive much deeper into always.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm just thinking like you're making points about Singapore and just sort of elaborating a little bit on like, what's happening in between, the public sector versus the private sector. I'm wondering in terms of blockchain and the entire Web3 space, what in your opinion creates that depth that's unique to Singapore that we've experienced like since we got here. We find that like we're sitting in meetings with Web3 and crypto and blockchain companies and seeing kind of that there is a level of this is just our observation. We feel that there's a level of depth to the ecosystem. So I would love to like hear your thoughts about the ecosystem, especially for like companies that are thinking of moving their headquarters or whatever to Singapore. Like what makes Singapore unique for the Web3 space?
Different locations around the world will offer different value depending on what you're looking for as a Web3 project or a crypto company, right? Or exchange like ours. So everyone will have different considerations. So that's important to recognize. There's no one size fits all. By the way, this is also what I told a lot of corporate investors when I was working for the Economic Development Board, right? In Singapore, I think a lot of folks will tell you about the community. What's very, I think, abundantly clear is the fact that we have a very well-established financial services industry that's very mature and developed and I think generally quite respected with a large base of talent. At the same time, and I'll take very little credit for this, but we have a very thriving tech ecosystem, right? So this confluence or this overlap is kind of like the raw material that will help build a great Web3 ecosystem, right? And of course, a distinct flavor here, because Singapore being what it is, safe, stable, it has to be a responsible and innovative Web3 ecosystem. And I think Singapore has a couple of other things that maybe I will touch really quickly on. One is it is known and seen as a good hub, right? So you can access talent and smart capital. You can access a community. People come here from all around the world, and they find a place for themselves, right? Because Singapore is that very stable platform or base for them to operate and live out of, right? The other thing, and this is really Singapore's claim to fame from hundreds of years ago, is our geographic location. I know it's funny because Web3 and digital is all about, it's not physical, right? It's decentralized. But Singapore is in the heart of Southeast Asia, which is a tremendous growth region. And we all know, like Kapil, you're based in Mumbai, like a lot of the Web3 use cases in DeFi especially are around developing market users, right? The middle, lower down the pyramid type of users who have differentiated needs from folks in places where there are more established economies and institutions. So for Southeast Asia, I think you see a lot of these similar characteristics, and Singapore's right in the heart of it. So a lot of Web3 builders are building their businesses and their applications in the region. A lot of them will then naturally gravitate to Singapore because that's one place where everybody gathers. So I think where Singapore is situated has also contributed to the leading position that Singapore has today. By our last count, and this is not our official count, but there's a group of community builders here, and we count at least 300, maybe 400 Web3 projects that are being built out of Singapore today. So that's really substantial.
Right. Now, one of the most important things, Chin Tah, in the crypto industry that we are experiencing globally is the element of trust. Now, in one part of the world, you say the government is not favoring crypto. Somewhere government is favoring crypto. Institutions trusting, not trusting, using, not utilizing. You see a lot of split. Now, for the new crypto builders as well as for the institutions, Crypto.com has been able to achieve and earn this trust of the community at large, which becomes a very important benchmark for everybody who's trying to build in this industry as well as the institutions who want to enter this industry. How do you see that, and how do you maintain? And if I can take a step back, how do you build this kind of a trust? What is the most important thing? And how do you maintain that so that millions of users trust Crypto.com with their funds, with the use cases? And use cases is the second thing I would like to talk about. But first of all, like getting that foundation so strong, which becomes a benchmark for the whole decentralized industry. How do we achieve that?
Well, first of all, we take nothing for granted, right? These things don't happen overnight. For example, our own licensing journey here in Singapore, to get that license for what they call digital payment token, but most places will call it virtual assets license, took us 3 years, right? So we're here to stay the course. It takes a lot of resources to build a world-class compliance program. And we are very proud to say today that we are probably one of, if not the most compliant exchange in the world for digital assets, right? We got licenses from Singapore, 2 of them, one for our Visa business, the other one for our exchange business. We're applying for one in Hong Kong. We are licensed in the UK by the FCA. We got regulatory approval in France, in the Netherlands. We have money transmission licenses in the US. So we have a lot of these registrations and licenses. My point here is it's been a journey. We take nothing for granted. It represents a real commitment, right? So it's not just a matter of, we are going to be compliant and you snap your fingers and you're going to be compliant tomorrow. It takes time. And in the same vein, it takes time to build trust. And I think one of the challenges that I've had as a professional and our company always gamely steps up to is we'll get questions from our partners like, hey, especially in the wake of what happened in 22, like, what's happening here? What are your plans? And then we have to be very patient and not understand that, try to see where they're coming from, right? Because from the outside in, it looks a little bit like, they may not understand it. We talked about this gap in understanding perception and reality. So we have to be very patient in just engaging with them, understanding where they're coming from, sharing with them through, well, not just telling them, but also showing them, like, look, these are the partnerships we have built. These are the licenses that we have. These are the security accreditations that we have. For example, we have a SOC 2, a Type 2 SOC 2 accreditation, which is bank-grade security, right? We have ISO certifications for privacy as well as cloud security. Which means we're one of very few digital asset companies which has it, because most just don't bother. But we felt that, hey, you can't just say you're secure. You need to demonstrate to people we are secure, right? So we have invested a lot in this area to build a platform that is compliant and secure. So that's how we got here, right? In terms of like continuing to build trust, I think we will double down. We have a term in the company called our regulatory or compliance momentum. We want to keep it up. We want to continue to demonstrate that this no flash in the pan. I think we're way past that. We have gotten so many licenses. People understand that this is not just a short-term push. It's a long-term commitment. But we need to continue to build on our portfolio of licenses and continue to make sure that our platform is safe and that our users' monies are fine, that they are well protected. So this is a commitment that we have made, not in words, but through actions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's what reflects, and that is why globally crypto.com is trusted so much. That brings me, you highlighted a point on the use cases earlier. Now, since the time we have been in Singapore, that's like the highlight of every discussion that we have had, use cases. And trust me when I say this is the term we have heard here in Singapore much more than any other geography that we do business with. Because here, without use case, you don't start. Otherwise, okay, decentralized infrastructure, there are multiple things you can do on that because we are trying to build a platform and it becomes much more open. So the kind of discussions you'll have is open. But here, I think because of the institutional foundation that Singapore has, directly pinpointed, what are the use cases? How do we drive it? According to you, for the decentralized technology at large, what do you see as the top use cases which provides that kind of a delta to the institutions who utilize this, versus because there's a lot of talk as well that you can use blockchain for this, but there's not actual delta that the institutions get by using it. In your experience, what are the top ones that actually provide that ROI for institutions or the larger users at large?
Okay. So this is an interesting, I think, question, because you framed it from a very institutional lens, which I appreciate, right? Because we speak to a lot of builders and they do great work. Right, I'm constantly impressed by their energy, their ideas, their willingness to go where nobody has gone before. But sometimes it is a little bit like, oh, this is crypto cool, but is there a commercial case for it? So I'm bringing it to a higher level of requirement, because there may be a use case, but are people going to pay for it? So is there a commercial case for it? And what's your business model? Like, you can issue a token, sure, and then something tokenomics, right? And this and that, right? I think it is, I respect them for doing it, but I also think that sometimes the rigor, and we talked about this before the podcast, like the rigor of like building a business out, right? The discipline of building a business out is a little, should also be taken into account, right? So in terms of institution use cases, the very, very big one is payments, right? And payments is sort of like a native use of the blockchain. You can say that. But now with lots of talk around, number one, stable coins, right? And two, like this convergence between DeFi and TradFi, if you will. I think there are a lot of interesting use cases that companies, institutions are starting to adopt. So like, for example, even crypto.com, with Visa, which is one of our oldest partners, right? And one that we have, whose relationship and partnership we really cherish. We settle with them in USDC, right? This is public information. It saves us time, reduces our safeguarding requirements, allows us to focus on our strategy. So this is a use case between two institutions, right? Then, of course, our first product was the Visa prepaid card, which is, well, a CeFi / not CeFi product, right? It's a CeFi DeFi product, right? Because you can load it up with your Bitcoin, with your ETH, with your Chronos, and then you can go out and spend wherever Visa is accepted. Now, it's a prepaid card because we wanted to de-risk it, right? It's also a And the reason why this was our first product for the company was because we wanted to give our users utility with crypto. So not just speculate, buy, sell, that's great, but also, spend, right? I think we're quite proud that we created the category, and we're one of the leaders within the crypto card category today, if not one of the last few people standing with a lot of sincere emulators, right? So we wanted to kind of like also, it's a bit on the nose, but our vision is a cryptocurrency in every wallet. So very literally, let's give people a prepaid card with Bitcoin loaded on it and put it in their wallet. That's cryptocurrency in every wallet, right? So we want to give people an easy way to understand. And Visa is a big brand, that's why, right? So this convergence is going to be important. It can't just be pure crypto. Of course, pure TradFi is just what we have today. So we personally find that this convergence between the two areas is where the magic is going to happen.
Just love the way you put it.
Yeah, no, super interesting. And I'm just thinking in terms of cryptocurrencies in general and the shift from Web 2 to Web 3, the skepticism that some people may feel in alignment with emerging tech. How would you, mitigate that skepticism that some people might be experiencing? Is there any sort of things that you can think of in terms of cryptocurrencies that drive major benefits for private people, that are looking to spend or looking to drive business? How can we mitigate that skepticism that sometimes exists among people out in the world?
It's a new area. It is normal and part of the human condition to be a little bit skeptical. And we have to accept that. As people who are trying to build the industry, build the technology, we have to accept that. And once we accept that, we have to be, I would propose or gently propose that there need to be very patient. So we talked about this earlier. It can't be tell them. They're sick of being told, right? They don't believe, so stop telling them, show them, right? In a lot of my conversations with not just former colleagues in government, but also just, friends and family, they're like, what's this crypto thing, right? Show me, what does it do? And it must be showing them real life use cases, right? We all know how great classical DeFi can be, right? Yield farming, staking, lending, borrowing, everyone can participate. But for a lot of folks who are in places like Singapore, the US, Europe, maybe where they have access to banking and a lot of asset classes already is less compelling. So we have to take a different tack with them, right? So I do think that the recent developments around the approval of the ETFs or ETPs in the UK, not just in the US, but UK, Australia, Hong Kong, for Bitcoin and Ethereum, will kind of it's both a indicator of where we are, but will also be a driver, right? So it represents institutional adoption. It will also drive more institutional adoption. It allows investment funds which don't have a mandate for crypto to get exposure to crypto. So this is the most important thing that happened. It also lowers the barriers to entry. My own point, and this is not financial advice, if you're going to buy Bitcoin, buy the underlying asset. Why would you buy ETF? But it's still a very monumental milestone that happened. These are some of the, in fact, it is the best performing ETF in history, right? So that's incredible. So I think the time is coming. We need to kind of hold on to our hats and not get too carried away. I think if we are dealing with people who have, as we have discussed, a healthy and normal level of skepticism, and you get carried away and we start talking about supercars going to exoplanets. I'm talking about going to the moon and Lambos, right? Once you do that, you lose credibility. Right, you start wearing your Bitcoin Gold chains and your G6s, and I think, I feel like we in Crypto.com, one of the most important values is stay humble, right? We're all about executing, right? So we got to stay humble. We take nothing for granted. Actions speak louder than words. We're only just getting started. These are things you see our executives and our founders talk about often, right? It's about execution. Right, you have a vision, you execute on it. It's not about, hey, this is gonna be amazing. I don't think the world needs more hype around Web3 or blockchain.
Fair point.
So it's about demonstrating to the world that this technology has its place, And we know it because the banks are also doing it. So we got to have faith and we have to be patient and we need to show with actions, not words.
Wow. I'm not even kidding. When you said the word stay humble, the most important thing, it gave me goosebumps. Because the reason for that is truly believe in that philosophy. And it's so rare to be found in the crypto industry, because the moment you start a crypto project, it's about shilling, let's do these airdrops, let's do this, let's do that. And the narrative around that 98% has become so flashy, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why the industry from a larger extent becomes questionable. And we start talking a lot about, okay, what are we gaining out of it? What is the ROI? And I think this is a very, very important learning for all the viewers, that this kind of philosophy actually creates value, which derives trust. And that's why millions of users and institutions rely on this kind of an infrastructure and use crypto.com. So do you think the cultural values of a company internally, like this stay humble philosophy that you spoke about, and I'm sure you have many other philosophies, that has a very big role in the way we kind of conduct ourselves in the external world and the way we kind of drive business even after the company becomes much bigger? So at a startup level, it's comparatively easier. I mean, if so 20 people, still the philosophies are easier because you have people who can you can have one-to-one connect with. But when you become a larger organization, how much does the cultural values play a role in going global?
I would say a lot. And you are absolutely right. When you are in a co-working space or one unit with 20 people and you are shoulder to shoulder, it's a very different setup. Like, you can shout across the room, you can build trust, you know what everybody's up to. And the most important thing is, from a cognitive perspective, you don't feel like you're doing any extra work. It naturally happens. Your all hands is a literal all hands meeting, right? Yeah. Once you get to the many dozens, several dozens or hundreds of employees, that starts to go away, right? I don't want to over-index on values because, wow, there are a lot of companies out there with empty visions, missions and visions, and empty values. They just talk about it. No one believes in it, right? So I don't want to over-index like, oh, this is super. It is important, but I believe it all boils down, my own opinion, to leadership, right? And making sure that at least if you build out the team, you continue to build trust and have a few folks that you can almost like deputize or making sure, taking care of middle management, right? The next layer down who will take care of everybody else. Because the founder will not be able to spend time with everybody the same way that he or she has in the past. And just like, and I would say that values and company mission, company vision are just one of a set of tools within a toolkit that corporate leaders can pick from, right? And though I will have to say staying humble is one that's very, very important. So even from before I joined Crypto.com, when I was in the EDB, like you see so many folks come in and out, and like I just wish we would focus on substance and impact, right? Rather than, oh, this is the valuation, this is the pre-money, this is the, like, yeah, okay, but when is the product gonna roll out? What are you building, right? So after all I said about maybe don't over-index on values, I think staying humble is one that I particularly am obsessed about, and I think it would do all of us very good, myself included, to just always remind ourselves that, you're not all that. It's about action and outcomes, not words, right? You are here, but you can go somewhere else and you can lose it tomorrow. So take nothing for granted.
Yeah, super interesting. And, we talk a lot about thought leadership, me and Kapil. And, just to kind of loop back to what you were saying, the importance of substance in leadership. Is there anything else that you want to highlight in terms of like, strong leadership and let's say if we're looking at some of the challenges that we'll be facing in the coming decades and all of the emerging tech that is being sort of built in order to support it, we're going to have a lot of strong leadership. Is there anything in terms of advice that you could give to some of the young leaders that are listening to the podcast, whether it be like values or mindset that could actually like be useful and helpful to them in their leadership journey?
Well, I am far from me to give any advice.
fair.
My experience with
humble.
startup founders and leaders, young men and women, is that they impress me so much with their energy. There's very little I can teach them, right? But if I may, because I've seen this in some of the young emerging leaders within my previous organization and it comes from a good place. Like I'll sum it up as like mission first or business first, but people centric, right? And it's that balance that's very important. But you should always overweight on mission, because a lot of younger leaders tend to be very precious about their people, right? They spend a lot of time, which is right. It comes from a good place. But ultimately, you have created a startup, or you're leading a team, or you're appointed a CEO. Your job is to deliver outcomes. Your job isn't to be a daycare service, expensive daycare service for people with. I don't want to be disrespectful, but the point is to drive outcomes. So sometimes in certain industries, the opposite happens. They drive too many outcomes. They forget about the people, right? In other sectors, they tend to be too precious about the people, and they don't push them hard enough, right? So it's about striking that balance. So I think the adage, or this kind of like mnemonic for myself, of like mission first or business first, but people centric, because people being the most important tool or resource you have to get your job done. Treat it that way. Don't put people first, but don't get caught up in too much of building out the business. You forget about your people, right? So that's the one thing at least I've observed, that I also try to remind myself, because it's always easy to be liked and stuff like that, right? And it's also very easy to get lost in building the business. So it's about striking that balance.
There are two things which are coming to mind when you make that statement, right? One has been your journey, your life in public services. Then you move to this public services, like is a different mentality, being more bureaucratic. And then you move to crypto world, which is like fast-paced, absolutely startup oriented. Does the mentality you had there work exactly here in terms of the style of working or the speed of working? Now, the way I connect that to is, in the startup world, it is believed that aggressive delivery is very, very important. Do you also believe in that way? Because public service is completely different. It's like a 9 to 5 thing, usually.
Yeah, depending on.
The impression, if I may, that is like 9 to 5, you have a good time with family, so there's work-life balance. But in the startup world, like as Jeff Bezos used the word work-life harmony. So you're not like a 9 to 5, the work has to get done. Tracking hours does not do the job. You have to be like really at it. What's your point of view in this thing, in your personal mindset shift, as well as your philosophy in terms of, driving business versus supporting people? How do you bring these things together?
So Kapil, you'll be surprised to hear that it's not all that different, because there are some common themes that are useful no matter where you are. The key one for me was just this idea of like being very curious, right? You have to be curious in the public service, at least in my function. I can't speak for all 140,000 people who work in the Singapore government. But at least within my organization, it's about, you have to be curious about learning about new industries, whether it's Web3 or maybe it's AI, maybe it's quantum. These are all three areas I've looked at during my time, right? Or is it like the upstream drilling and production, like offshore and marine machinery, like, fewer people have walked on the bottom of the ocean than on the surface of the moon, that kind of stuff, right? My organization took care of industries as disparate as that. We also have a space program, or they also have a space office that looks at how we will build a space industry in Singapore. It sounds like a crazy idea, but those are the people that work in the good men and women think about in EDB. So that translates very well, I think, to a startup environment. You have to be curious. You have to be curious about what? I think the first thing, technology is great. I almost feel irresponsible. This would be an irresponsible thing to say that technology almost take care of itself. But you have to be curious about your user. Yeah. I mean, are you thinking about your customer journey? Like, are you curious? Like, are you making a bunch of assumptions about what they need? Because that I think is something that we all need to work a little bit harder on. We make a lot of assumptions, because I will also use the product, but you use it different from other people, and different markets, different segments, right? And you may have also assumed this is a use case that's commercially viable. It may not be. It may be a use case, but no one's going to pay for it. There are lots of stuff out there that's like that, right? So I think curiosity is super important, and that translates, of course, hard work and everything else. 9 to 5, I don't know what you're talking about. At least in my organization, is not a 9 to 5 organization. I guess you are right. We in the startup world or the tech world, it's people push really hard, right? Push really, really hard. My own observation there is we are all adults. You choose your own pain. You choose your own success. You choose what you're proud of. Just don't choose and regret later. That's on you. You can't blame your boss, your founder, your LP, your VC, the guy who or gal who told you that, hey, you have to do this. Don't you want to be awesome? Don't you want to exit at this valuation? Don't you want to be promoted? Don't you want to win this market? Don't you want that bonus? That's all on you. You make those decisions. That's why, work-life harmony, work-life balance, all these are words. But the point is you choose your own balance and you have to live with the consequences. This startup or this company won't be here with you for you forever. It ain't family, right? We're all adults. We know what we are getting into. So long as people are, consenting and they feel like they have dignity, then they choose their own adventure, right? That's the way I think about it. There's no. It's really all on us. We have to take responsibility for our own actions and decisions in life.
Outstanding. Any thoughts on this?
No, I mean, okay, there are tons of thoughts.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's why I
tons of
asked
thoughts. Yeah, I think it's very interesting to speak a little bit about, personal ownership and how that can drive results, as well as, your personal development as a leader or as an individual. So I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think that, I have a lot of personal conversations with people about, the benefits of like wanting to invest in these types of mindsets and like learn as much as possible, like adopting both curiosity and the ownership element. In order to find more peace, right? Because ultimately, if you are, an aspiring entrepreneur with really high, or not high, but like large, grand visions for the future, you're ultimately going to have to deal with a lot of pressure, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of anxiety, maybe even like insecurities at times. So that's something that I relate to as well, is like taking more ownership in life can drive peace, and that kind of like will sipper into, the people that you touch in your organization as well. So yeah, what you're saying makes perfect sense to me. So I think you put it really perfectly. Yeah.
Now this is going to be a very interesting angle to connect this mindset, Chin Tah, that you have really perfectly put it on, on the table for the people to understand that what it takes, first of all, what kind of human and what kind of mindset does it require to be a disruptor, to innovate, to run or to build something. Now, if we connect this with the emerging technologies, you spoke about, you have worked on, AI, quantum, now of course crypto. How do you think these technologies, these emerging technologies, is shaping the future? Crypto, of course, we have dived much deeper into. So if maybe we can connect crypto with quantum and AI, do you think the emergence of these two technologies, how did this impact the crypto industry? Because I'm sure this kind of mindset is very important to apply this and drive it with a lot of curiosity.
Yes.
Unless you have curiosity, you can't connect the plugs.
Yes.
And unless you connect the plugs, you can't grow and innovate further. So now getting more into, let's say, the technical side, if I may, with this kind of mind shift, how does these two emerging technologies, quantum and AI, impact the crypto business?
Well, on quantum, I may cheekily say you guys would know way better because you guys are the ones building a quantum-resistant blockchain or project. There are people who actually take it all together. They call quantum AI and blockchain Web3. It depends on how you define the future of the internet, right? For me, I think the immediate and obvious answer is like, hey, quantum is going to be a big deal. Especially as it relates to some of the cryptographic techniques we use to secure the blockchain, and in fact, not just blockchain but all databases. Right? It's going to be an issue, right? So that requires a lot of further thinking about the impact there. It could be, I don't want to overstate it, but it could really upend the way we think about security. And now that everyone's data is at least on the cloud, if not on the blockchain, right, with individual sovereign identity, I think this is something that we all need to think carefully about. And I don't even know where to begin in terms of like tackling this, but maybe you have more insights there. AI is very much the flavor of the month. AI, interestingly, when I was based in New York, I was tasked with like, Chin Tah, you're in New York, there's a bunch of like, IBM Watson was one of the original, right? They built, what was it? Deep Blue, the machine that first beat Gary Kasparov at chess, right?
Yeah.
That was built on the Watson framework / model. So, hey, why not you do a project on AI? And I was like, wow. Like from then till now, it's really, you can see the hype cycle, vibrating through time. Like it was very big then it went down for a bit, and now it's back up because of the success of a lot of the large language models and generative AI, which has really transformed the sectors from the creative sector to just the way we run professional services business. Even in our business, like you just are able to put out code so much faster, right? So I think AI has already made its impact felt. The funny thing here is a lot of people compare blockchain unfavorably with AI as if it's some kind of weird competition. And because I have to be polite to these people, I'm like, hey, look, one's fundamentally B2B, one's because blockchain is a very B2B kind of. We talk about like in DeFi it is B2C, but a lot of the applications are B2B. It's not obvious, and if you're not a consumer using a non-custodial wallet, you won't even know. You can't even experience it, right? But the other point is, generative AI has impacted everything, right? It's everywhere. They are using it. They are using ChatGPT, right? They are using OpenJourney and stuff like that. So Midjourney. So I find it hard to kind of like, I don't want to defend blockchain. I think it should speak for itself. But the funny thing is, instead of competing, they actually interact in interesting ways, right? So if you like start tokenizing compute resources on the blockchain, and this is something that people are already doing through a bunch of very interesting projects. You can also tokenize solar power generation, you can tokenize a bunch of other things, but AI, you can tokenize that. You can share GPU resources across the world. Instead of having a platform or utility provider or research institute that owns all the GPUs, you can have underutilized GPUs and have the blockchain manage the allocation of rewards in the form of tokens and also distribute the compute time, right? This to me is a wonderful application or marriage between the two emerging technologies, right? Even and from a decentralized perspective, even like doing AI model training, a lot of it is being done by the large Web 2 firms today. In fact, this is exactly what happened really quickly. Like overnight, it's just the few very big Web 2 firms we are all familiar with, right? And I think blockchain, again, if applied in a targeted fashion, in a wise way, might be able to kind of like decentralize that training, that compute resource a little bit, right? So that make it a bit more democratic. So I think AI and blockchain, we need to have a conversation about it together. Quantum, I really don't know enough. I don't know where to begin, but maybe you guys will know. You guys certainly know better.
Come on. But I think you mentioned a very good point, like, and you about the convergence of how AI comes out and interact with the blockchain. And on the quantum side, just to add a flavor on how the most powerful thing about quantum computing can create an impact on the security that we use today for blockchain, and hence quantum resistant solutions become much relevant. And we are like, very keenly exploring how can that play out with AI and then solve the larger purpose for the growing decentralized and the crypto world. But there's another flavor of the month which is going on right now, which is RWAs.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Oh man, it's huge. Like this goes back to the point around convergence, right? So RWAs are a good idea, right? I was just talking to a major international financial institution this morning, and they have their own kind of like private permission blockchain. And like it's like to folks who are in the Web3 world, they're like, your private permission blockchain, like people fall asleep, right? But to them, it's groundbreaking because suddenly they can do they can move reserves or funds outside of work banking hours. Now this sounds mundane, but it's not. It's tectonic, right? So suddenly I can move like my funds from Hong Kong. Hong Kong may have shut already. It's like 8 p.m. They are no longer working. But I can, if it's on the blockchain, I can pull the funds into New York, right? Depending on how you have designed the blockchain. So I'm like, that's huge, because previously they would just be stuck. But now they can do that. They can be much more efficient with their capital, the way they allocate it, right? So even though I'm just giving this as an example of how already in this use case, what we would consider in the Web3 world a fairly maybe edge use case, but it's a powerful one because it solves a real pain point, right? And it goes back to, is that a commercial use case? Is that a pain point that we're addressing? This addresses a big pain point for TradFi because a lot of them are distributed around the world, right? So they see the value of blockchain. They're investing in their own blockchain teams. This is even though publicly they may say something else, but they are investing in their own blockchain. So I think it's very exciting. And this is a form of like, going back to your question about RWA, is like the convergence. And you can see a lot of these funds may be in the form of investment instruments that are already tokenized, right? So it comes together. We have a number of, we work with a number of partners in Singapore and elsewhere who run RWA platforms. And it's just very exciting to kind of like be there in the room and hear them talk about, look, it may not seem to you crypto folks to be incredibly exciting, but hey, now every one of us can buy, like we talk about buying US treasuries, but we, Kapil, Olivia, and Chin Tah don't buy US. We buy through a broker, right? But their platform allows us to buy directly 24/7. That was not possible. And it can be fractionalized indefinitely. So these are the obvious hygiene factors of blockchain that we have taken for granted for like a decade. But these are super valuable, right? Singapore is known for having our real estate investment trust, the REITs, right? But if you tokenize real estate, that is a REIT right there, right? We will have to sort out a lot of real world issues because it doesn't mean that you say you own a piece of it, you actually really own a piece of it. Then you sort out a bunch of different things. But I'm personally very excited about it. I think it's an area that we're watching very closely. And it speaks to the broader convergence trend that it's not DeFi versus TradFi. It's not an us versus them. It's not a one or the other. People like to frame it in a very binary way. I like to tell people, look, people ask me, is crypto the future? I'm like, hold on there. Crypto is the future in the sense that it's part of the future. It's not going to be all of the future, right? So I think things like RWA, the ETFs, our payment rails, like even offered by Crypto.com, all these represent kind of like the best of breed, the best of both worlds, may I say. I'm not saying they're perfect, but no solution is perfect. And I think this is a great place to start because people trust some of these institutions. They trust some of these brands. This is a great way to start building and driving adoption for the blockchain and DeFi in general.
Very interesting. And, this makes me curious about, of course, there are so many new use cases coming in, the convergence with these emerging technologies coming in, which is impacting the crypto and a decentralized world at large. But like you rightly mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, the foundational use case is payments, right? Which now even governments are paying attention to by having CBDCs in place. And even in the crypto world, the importance to stability to kind of address the question marks on the fluctuation that crypto has become the relevance, and that is where stablecoins come into picture. And Singapore became the first country, if I'm not wrong, to regulate stablecoins. How do you see, and if we can dive a little bit deeper into CBDCs and stablecoins, we can address them one by one, or we can connect them. If there is a convergence that happens, how does it pan out? What's your view on these two use cases? Because CBDC is from the government point of view, stablecoins is again private sector. But do you see a conflict, if I may, or do you see both of them existing in parallel? So for the audience, if I may request you first explain what CBDC is, because it's a new concept. What is stablecoin, and then how does it operate together or independent?
Sure. I'm gonna do my best, right? So CBDC stands for central bank backed, central bank digital currencies, right? It's basically a sovereign fiat currency on the blockchain that's usually, in this case, permission and closed, right? Then stablecoins are usually built on the public blockchain, done by private companies like Tether and Circle, and backed by the US dollar. It's basically a tokenized US dollar, right? So I don't have a strong view. Crypto.com doesn't have a position. We obviously have a bunch of trading pairs, USDT, USDC. But again, I feel like it plays to the broader theme of convergence, because this is I think it's so interesting, right? Because sure, USDT is the medium of exchange for DeFi in many ways. USDC too, right? By USDT. But the first two letters are US. The first three are USD. That's a currency issued by a government, right? So already from a long time ago, we've gone down this path of convergence, but people haven't really called it out very clearly yet. And I think this just proves that the future is a convergent one, right? The role of stablecoins, I think, it gives people who are new to the sector a lot of comfort. It's a US dollar. I understand the US dollar, right? And this is kind of like a great way to introduce people to it. Based on what we see, there are already 100 million users engaged with stablecoins. I think that might be a bit of a lower estimate, but that's what we understand. And already today, there's more US debt held by the US dollar stablecoins than many other countries. I think it's ranked 18th. If you count the US dollar stablecoins as a sovereign entity, they are the 18th largest holder of US dollar debt in the world, right? So it is already it's already achieved some level of scale, and I think there's still some room to grow. Your question is, can they interact? Can they coexist? They already do. I think it's fine. I may be wrong. This is a very narrow view, and my own personal one, not the company's. But really, we like to frame things sometimes as like, one or the other. But it's okay. There are many different ways you can interact with currencies. There are many different ways you can interact with blockchain and Web3 and DeFi and TradFi. It's okay, right? I think it is a feature, not a bug. The fact that we as consumers, as individuals, have options. Right? We can now choose our own adventure, choose our own way to build wealth, to pay. Like I could pay Olivia on the blockchain using ETH, maybe not ETH Solana, probably a gas fees are lower.
Exactly.
In Dubai, in under a minute, right? When previously I could also use Swift, but why would I, right? Like that's more costly. It takes 1 to 4 days. If I fly there, the money will reach you faster, but I wouldn't because unless gas fees get really high, I won't fly there. But that's the thing. Like we have options as consumers to pay, to invest, to lend, to borrow, and I think the future is ripe with opportunity. We just need to be careful and build with care, explain with care, be mindful of others' reservations because they come from they have their own considerations, which are fair, right? So I think it's generally, I don't want to overhype it, but I think it's generally exciting, pretty good and positive picture.
Very interesting. It's super interesting to hear kind of like your personal thoughts and your personal ways of thinking. As much as this podcast is about merging tech and understanding your perspective on crypto and the entire space, it's also about like understanding your mind, like your process, your thinking. And on that note, I'd just like to ask kind of like it's a general question, kind of geared towards some of our younger listeners that are looking to get into the space or looking into becoming leaders and whatnot. What's the best advice that you've ever received?
That's a difficult one.
She asks that question always.
Oh dear. I guess maybe because I'm super hard-headed, I don't remember a lot of advice. I don't know, stand up straight.
Yeah, there's no like pressure in the question, of course. It's more so like if there's anything that comes to mind, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so this is something that comes to mind. It's from a long time ago. I was a much younger man, and back then I was offered an opportunity, still with the government, the EDB, to be posted to an overseas location. That location was São Paulo, Brazil. Very far away. I've never been. I don't speak Portuguese, nor Spanish, but mainly Portuguese. And we didn't have an office there, so I had to set it up. It was like super high risk. Is it a good move for my career? What will happen? It's so far away. And one of my friends, I was talking to my friends about it, and she said, you know what, there's this story that we discussed in class, in literature class, and they dissected the structure of any fairy tale or fable, right? There's always an individual who's usually a really regular guy or gal who is presented with a situation, and it is precisely their reaction to the situation that usually involves a lot of growth and them stepping up that forms the crux of the story. That's the structure of most fairy tale narratives, right? And I'm like, okay. Then she said, the bottom line is, if you can lead a normal life, that's fine, but no one will write stories about you, right? Now, it sounds like a very immodest thing to say. I'm not trying to say I have protagonist energy or main character energy. That's not the point. The point is, like, sometimes you need to take a risk, right? And I felt like going there to Sao Paulo and staying there for 3 years was one of the most enriching experiences that I've had. It was filled with suffering, obviously. My reservations were not without cause, but I think for at least audiences, depending on where they are from, if you are a Singaporean kid, I'll say take more risks. For other people, you might want to talk to more people. But the point is, maybe there's two morals of the story. One is take risks, but before that, talk to a friend. Maybe that's like kind of like where I want to end off this little story. Yeah.
I love that. Super interesting. Yeah.
Do you think suffering is important for growth?
I think so. And I say that from a perspective. So my wife will always say, no, you don't like suffering. I'm like, yeah, I really hate suffering, right? So, but maybe because of that, I'm very sensitive to suffering. I think it is definitely important for growth, right? If it represents the fact that you're trying really hard. You're really going for it. You're trying to go to the moon. You're trying to build something great. You are doing something difficult, and that involves repeated attempts and often failure. So a lot of that is suffering, right? And I think that's okay. Better than okay. You need to have that kind of a journey. And I think apart from the skills you build through the process, at the end of it, what it gives you is the confidence, not that, wow, I'm awesome. It gives you the confidence that I'm not awesome and it's okay. Just like everybody else, I muddled through it, right? Look, you have so many people who are like, oh, I accomplished this because I'm amazing. I'm like, yes, you earned it. But at the same time, look at the circumstances, right? I don't want this to be a conversation about privilege and luck, but there are many elements of that even in startup. There's a lot of elements of that, right? Yeah. And again, it's about not taking any of that for granted. I think choosing the path of highest resistance, especially when folks are early in their career, is generally the good choice. Because no matter what, you're going to learn, right? And that learning will give you that confidence that the next round comes around, you can make through it. Not because you're amazing, but you have that capacity to learn and to kind of like push your way through it.
Excellent.
I want to discuss two situations with you on this front. Okay. Number one is what shapes a normal individual into a leader. And I've always believed that by design, there can only be 1% people who are meant to lead. By design. And the job of that leader becomes identifying the right person to do the right job, and of course then leading it from the front. If somebody who's not meant to be, or who does not have the confidence, or who does not have the required skill set to become a leader, no matter how much you shape them, you train them, you put them in the right places, they will goof up. So it's like a lot of mindset and mentality that plays a big role and makes you by design a leader. Right? And then kind of course, your circumstances plays a big role in that. And that is where the point of, sufferings, the journey that you have had, that plays a big role in shaping you into, are you the top 1% or you're not meant to be the top 1%. Now, this is where two situations that comes to my mind. Number one is the kind of life an individual has. It is surrounded with, situations and circumstances that naturally shaped them into something. Now, for example, Olivia has traveled a lot already. She has had a different, cultural experience. When she sits here today, her life so far has been in a way that it has made her culturally rich. And then that's why even, when we are doing business discussions with people across the globe, she's able to connect with people. That's a life she has had. Versus an individual who wants to be at the top, but has not had either a suffering, either those kind of experiences, and sees that the kind of life he or she has, it's not going to be that naturally things will come his or her way. So this individual starts instilling this kind of suffering on its own by taking difficult decisions, by putting him or her in difficult situations, so that if life is not training him or her, they do it by themselves so that they reach the top 1%. How do you see, does this make, first of all, any kind of resonance, if I may? And do you see these two things differently? What's your point of view, just out of curiosity?
I'm reflecting on, this is a big question. It's a bit philosophical, right? And I would say that, like this, even this idea of top 1% or people who should lead, shouldn't lead, I think it's, I'm a bit uncomfortable talking about, simply because like, who decides, right? If you want to do something, you can lead it yourself. Leadership is not only about leading other people. It's about leading an initiative, leading a cause, standing up for what you believe in. That's what leadership looks like. Leadership is not necessarily rallying people. That's a very classical, what is known as big person leadership, right? I think there are some reasons why that's maybe not as applicable today, but there are some situations that are still applicable. It really depends. So I guess the other thing I'm going to say is there are many different styles of leadership depending on what you're attempting to lead. Let's focus mainly on leadership of other people, right? So there are many different styles. So there's no correct way of doing it. It really depends on your cultural context, what you're trying to accomplish, and your own personality. What works for me may not work for Olivia, what works for Olivia may not work for you. It is vastly different and very, very dependent on the cards you have been dealt and what you're trying to achieve. But I guess the third thing I'll say is no matter what, leadership must begin with self-mastery. If you can't even manage yourself, you have no business managing other people, right? And which is why, and I guess so, we've all been there working with people who are having a bit of a hard time, right? And it's easy for us to also get frustrated at them and be maybe a bit unkind or uncharitable in the way we frame them, like, oh, she or he is this or that. Like, why are they so incompetent, so slow, taking credit for my work? Like, all these very toxic leadership behaviors. But, I prefer to be a bit more compassionate. It's still frustrating, but I'm like, they are somehow in that position. And a lot of times it's because they lack self-mastery. Right? They're having a hard time usually handling their own insecurity. That's why they behave the way they are. Now, can you help them? Oftentimes the answer is no. So as an adult, what can you do? You have a limited set of options, right? So again, whatever decision we make, we just have to be responsible for it. Sometimes you can only walk away, sometimes you can help, sometimes ask to be transferred, I don't know. But the point here is self-mastery, regardless of the style of leadership, I think is very important.
Yeah. I can actually keep having this conversation all day. You are so amazing, Chin Tah. Oh God. Thank you so much. Really. No. I really don't want to end this conversation, but in the interest of time, and I know you have other commitments. Thank you so much. On behalf of Olivia and myself, it was our absolute pleasure having you on Quantum Minds. And I'm sure the listeners have had a great time. They're going to learn so much when they see this. Once again, thank you so much. Any closing remarks? Would you like to say anything?
No, I just really wanted to say that I'm very grateful for the opportunity. It's great to have this chance to talk a little bit about technology and stuff that we're all trying to build together. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was Chin Tah. Thank you so much for joining Quantum Minds. See you in the next episode.